The French Revolution of 1789 was the uprising of French commoners who rose against the monarchy and took control of the government. During this revolution, the common French people managed to abolish centuries-old traditions such as absolute monarchy and feudal system in a decade fight, which makes it why this revolution is one of the most important events in modern European history. The monarchs had ruled in France for centuries with minor problems, but the political and the socio-economic situation was a bit different during King Louis XVI's reign. While feudalism had already disappeared in parts of Europe, it still remained prevalent in France, the most populated country in Europe. The peasants who possessed an improved standard of living and education were unhappy with the skyrocketing prices, the heavy taxes, and the feudal system. The wealthy commoners, often called the bourgeoisie, wanted political power. The government was also in the brink of bankruptcy due to unnecessary participation in the American Revolution. In 1786, Charles Alexander de Calonne, Comptroller General of Finances, proposed a financial reform package that made the privileged classes pay higher taxes. The aristocrats were not happy with this proposal, and in order to stop them from revolting, the king scheduled the Estates General, an assembly representing France's clergy, nobility, and middle class, to hold a voting in 1789. Although the middle class represented 98% of the society, the first and second estates votes were worth more, and they were able to veto the third estate's vote. The voting had no conclusion, and the deputies of the third estate decided to meet alone, naming themselves the National Assembly. Unable to gather in their regular meeting hall, the Assembly held a meeting in a tennis court and swore not to disperse until constitutional reform is reached. The king reluctantly absorbed all three estates into the National Constituent Assembly, but he was secretly gathering troops to disperse the assembly. Meanwhile, rumors began to spread that the king and the nobles were conspiring to overthrow the third estate. Riders stormed the Bastille Fortress, a symbol of royal tyranny, to secure gunpowder and weapons. The revolutionary wave also spread to the countryside and set the Great Fear in motion. Peasants began to rise against their lords and the feudal system, looting and burning the homes of tax collectors. With these events, the Assembly had no choice but to abolish feudalism in 1789. But this was just the beginning. The tensions in the country were growing. The Assembly wished to replace the monarchy with a new political system that shared the power between the king and the Assembly. The Assembly would make new rules, and the king would be able to veto their votes and appoint ministers. However, neither the aristocrats nor the influential radicals were happy with this arrangement. This was made even worse when the king tried to flee the country in 1791, but was stopped and brought back to Paris. Meanwhile, anti-revolutionaries had fled to countries like Austria and Prussia, and the Assembly, believing that the immigrants were planning to ambush the country with their alliances, declared war in 1792. In Paris, insurgents attacked the royal palace and arrested the king. Shortly after, King Louis XVI, Marie Antoinette, his wife, and hundreds of anti-revolutionists were executed, and the French Revolution entered its most violent phase. The Legislative Assembly was replaced by the National Convention, and Maximilien Robespierre, a member of the Committee of Public Safety, ordered over 15,000 suspected enemies of the revolution to be executed in a period of 10 months, known as the Bloody Reign of Terror, until his own execution in 1794. A year later, the National Convention appointed a 5-member directory who had executive power in country. However, their 4 years of ruling was filled with corruption and popular discontent. 1 year before the turn of the century, Napoleon Bonaparte, a young general, staged a coup d'etat against the directory and appointed himself as France's first consul. This event marked the end of French Revolution and the beginning of Napoleonic era, during which France dominated most of Europe.